Welcome to the channel, everybody. Let's get after it.
A tall being pointed a tube at a boy and he vanished in front of witnesses. I'll bet you've never heard this UFO encounter and abduction case. It's pretty wild.
The creatures started coming out. They did not look too much like humans. They were much taller than humans. They did have shoulders, but I didn't see the head.
So check this out. In late September of 1989, there were children playing soccer in Voronezh, which was an area of the Soviet Union at the time, and they witnessed something extraordinary. A glowing red sphere, 10 to 15 feet wide, descended silently from the sky and landed on the grass. From the craft, 3 humanoid beings emerged. One was towering, like 9 feet tall, wearing a metallic suit with a disc on its chest and a single eye in the center of its forehead, like a cyclops. The others were smaller, yet equally strange. Witnesses also reported a cube-shaped microwave-sized like robot scanning the area and a floating orb pulsing nearby. Then something even more bizarre happened. The tall visitor raised a tube-like device and pointed it at a boy named Vasya, and in an instant the boy vanished. Screams erupted. Minutes later, the sphere and its occupants departed, and Vasya reappeared, unharmed, but obviously shaken. The Soviet news agency TASS reported the event nationwide, which was unusual given the era's media control at the time. Scientists investigated it. They found a circular depression in the ground and elevated radiation levels, although not dangerous. Police and witnesses confirmed consistent testimonies, but skepticism followed, of course, and officials admitted embellishments in the reports, and they said that soil anomalies were natural, and it was just mass hysteria and propaganda and misinterpretation. Whatever it was, something definitely happened, and these people stayed consistent in their testimonies. I mean, the group all agreed on the same thing. It's wild. I don't know. Let me know what you think about it.
This one was interesting. I had never come across this story before. I found an old article from the New York Times in 1989 that claims that this wasn't a singular isolated event either. They claimed that this thing landed 3 times between September 23rd and September the 29th. And when they asked all of the kids to draw what they had seen, after isolating them and separating them away from each other, they all drew the same image of a banana-shaped UFO that left the letter X behind in the sky whenever it flew. And the most interesting part to me is that they went and tested the ground there and determined that whatever had landed at that site must have weighed multiple tons. They also discovered radiation in the soil as well as the presence of multiple strange elements, one of them being phosphorus. Big surprise there. Unfortunately, that's about all the information I could dig up on this. Very fascinating story though. It's crazy how many different descriptions we get of these UFOs whenever there's an eyewitness account. I thought this one was particularly interesting because it's multiple eyewitnesses all describing the exact same thing, and what they're describing is something I'd never heard about before. Just how many different races of these things are we dealing with?
So to give you the overview of what cloud seeding is, about 93% of all of the liquid water that traverses, liquid and ice water that traverses the lower atmosphere over the U.S., so the water in the clouds, right? About 93% of that doesn't precipitate over land. It just evaporates away or gets recycled by the oceans. That means that there's a ton of water up there that's just going to waste that you can bring down. So certain clouds that aren't naturally precipitating or that aren't very efficiently precipitating, you can identify those with radar. You can measure that there's liquid in them that isn't coming down, fly a drone up into them, disperse a material that freezes the liquid in the cloud, and we can talk about what that material is later, but disperse a material that freezes the liquid in the cloud into big heavy snowflakes that become heavy enough to fall down, and if it's warm beneath the cloud, melt into rain. If it's cold, stay as snow. And so if you just blast a cloud, right, that isn't, and then it rains, that isn't necessarily proof that you caused it to rain, right? Like maybe you're just good at picking clouds that were going to rain anyway. And so nobody could really justify doing this at scale up until 2017. And what changed then was the National Center of Atmospheric Research, an organization called NCAR out in Colorado. They realized if you have the right wavelength of radar, of dual polarization radar, which I'll talk about again in a sec too, but if you have the right kind of radar and you fly in a zigzag, right, or in a circle, or in your initials, and you only see precipitation on the radar in your flight track, then you can say, oh, that is definitively man-made because we flew in this zigzag or we flew in this spiral, and there's only precipitation occurring in that shape. They did that in Idaho in 2017 multiple times, and that was the very first time that people were able to show, one, that it was unambiguously working, and two, that they could measure how much water they put on the ground. And so most folks, even in the scientific community, are still catching up to speed with this tech. The regulatory community, some people know about it, think it's cool. Some people think that it doesn't exist. Some people don't know the difference between cloud seeding and geoengineering and a bunch of other stuff. But
I'm in that category.
We'll talk about that then.
It's funny how just a year and a half ago, whenever I first started this YouTube channel, people were still getting hit with community notes for posting this exact same information. Now they're openly admitting that they're dispersing material into the clouds to change their behavior. And from what I found online, the most common material that they use to put in these clouds to make it rain is silver iodide. So of course, now they're trying to convince us that silver iodide is not toxic or harmful to humans. But a quick Google search will show you that it causes skin and eye irritation, skin discoloration, and some studies suggest potential links between silver exposure and reproductive or developmental issues. The second most used material in cloud seeding is potassium iodide. Side effects include skin rash, swollen salivary glands, metallic taste in the mouth, burning sensation in the mouth and throat, sore teeth and gums, upset stomach, nausea, diarrhea, headache, head cold symptoms. Honestly, can we not just let nature be nature so these guys that are trying to play God don't accidentally kill everybody? Hey, don't forget to click like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com.
Airships, actual boats that were attached to one or more balloons in the 1700s. Check this one out. This one is from one of the World's Fairs. It says Exposition Universelle 1894. At the top, we've got this gigantic balloon, and it is tied to and holding up a house, a mansion at that. If I were to zoom in, notice this underneath it. Okay, this is real. This really existed. I looked this up, I had studied this, and this apparently actually was a floating mansion that was tied to a balloon, and this right here was an elevator, an ancient elevator, 1800s, 1894. And the people down here at the bottom at the World's Fair, the people would get into these elevators. There's one right here, actually. You see this one? There's an elevator that's attached, and they would ride the elevator all the way up and get off into this huge mansion that was a floating house in the sky, a floating castle. They made these in the old world. Just wanted to show you, this is from the National Air and Space Museum website and the Smithsonian, and they have a whole article that displays, you know, this floating castle idea. Here's other ones. These are more hot air balloons. So before they actually had the ability to try to steer the ships, navigating the skies, it was pretty much balloons that had ships attached to them, which is why they're called airships, right? As you can see here, it's clearly a boat. It's a sky boat. Right? People rode around. There's even a net. This guy's climbing the net, just like it's a ship, like a pirate ship or something. But these are the pirates of the air, the pirates of the sky. And they learned how to navigate the skies.
I've seen documentation going back as far as 1670 showing functional airships, but you have to really dig for it. Google will lie to you and tell you that the earliest airships were created in 1852. But then there's a Wikipedia article that talks about this string of airship sightings that happened between 1896 and 1897, but then all of the people who saw them were all treated like lunatics who had spotted a UFO because airships didn't exist yet. Why is there so much conflicting evidence around this topic, with most of it being obvious lies that are extremely easy to discredit? It just doesn't make any sense why there would be this level of conflicting information online unless they were intentionally trying to confuse us and keep us from finding out the real truth. I almost wonder, thinking back to all the weird paintings we've seen with UFOs and stuff in them, maybe these were early airships in these old paintings. And looking at that massive mansion being held up with an airship, maybe they used those things to place the stones on the pyramids. I know that's a bit of a stretch, but when they won't even give us a definitive timeline that we can trust, it makes it reasonable in my mind to take this theory to the extreme and look at all potential possibilities, considering they're so adamant about keeping this information from us.
In the history of Real ID,
So it passed in 2005. The first proposed rule came out in 2007, and state legislatures suddenly realized what had happened. And yes, we have this history. Thank you, Lou, for pulling that up. They realized what had happened, and they started passing laws against Real ID and resolutions opposing Real ID. And there it sat until 2015, when Obama shouted from the rooftops that in 2016 you wouldn't be able to fly without a Real ID. So again, a lie, but meant it to push in that direction. And then all the states started to fall because their constituents were afraid that they couldn't fly, and they were calling their legislators, and states just sort of gave in over the next 3 years. But in between that time, when those resolutions and state laws prohibited conformance and Obama yelled from the rooftops, in between that time, we thought nothing was happening. Except we found out from an article that was published in May of 2020 that actually this little Real ID office in the Department of Homeland Security had figured out that they could go to DMVs directly. So they started to fund DMVs, even in these states where it was against the law to do anything with Real ID. These states started to take the money from this Real ID office in Homeland Security, and they started just building up their driver's license system till it was basically 95% of the way to compliance, so that they were ready when it would be pushed over. Right? So they were doing it behind the backs of the legislators, behind the backs of their governors, and outside of state law. So they were violating the law. So when I say DMV, rogue DMV agents, I mean it. They have a history of it.
And the moment that everyone realizes that this Real ID came off the boots of a recommendation from the 9/11 Commission, everyone's alarm bells should be going off. Of course, this is all being done under the idea that false documents are a national security risk. But the way I see it, this isn't an extra restriction on people here visiting from outside of the country. It's an extra restriction on U.S. citizens. So they're pretty much telling us right there that they view all of us as a national security concern. And the only national security concerns I've seen in the past decade were the atrocities committed by our own federal government. Maybe if they hadn't have been letting this many people come into the country unvetted to the point that everybody's scared of their next door neighbor, people would actually stop and think about what they're signing up for. Funny how that works, isn't it?
I think on one side of it, I think we really do have an entire subspecies of creatures that do exist mostly inside the earth, and they are not readily surface dwelling anymore. And I do believe, like in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, man, inside the London Bridge is a massive room, like a throne room, where they engage in this magic. But these Brotherhood of the Serpent, they call upon Nahash, the dragon. And
would that be in normal terms Satan?
Yeah, most people know him as Satan, right? Yeah. But like there is a great red dragon. Like it's a physical, that's what he looks like in reality. He was cursed, and man, he made him a monster. Yahweh made him a monster. And they would commune with these things. There's 13 grandfathers take 13 of their grandsons, and they bring them into these rooms and do these things on these specific times and rituals for all kinds of stuff. But the dragons tell them the future. This is like always what they've been able to do. Is Satan leads Yeshua up onto a great high place and says, I shows them all the nations of the earth and all their kingdoms and their reigns in a moment of time. He shows them the future. That's what they do. They can show you what's to come. This is why we get hunted by them. He knows if we're going to be part of his adversaries. He knows if we're going to be on his enemy list. And that's why he targets us at our youth. That's what so happens. So many people, they're like, why has my life been a nightmare from the beginning? It's because you have a purpose and a destiny that adversary absolutely categorically does not want to come to pass. It's a real life Terminator scenario. And so he sends his assets in to destroy people, to ruin their life. And those meeting places happen when they sit down in these rooms and they try to call up these creatures. It's from inside the earth. It wasn't like ethereal mist. They were physical things that would come out of these tunnels, and they would come into the room and they would consume the offerings that were given there. And then the words of the Nahash would come forth, and they would prophesy to these guys. Like, they would prophesy out of the mouth of the serpent what each one of their life callings, their shots. He's the shot caller, man. It's like a pimp from prison. He's calling the shots, and you had a bunch of fallen watchers that were in prison in Tartarus for a reason. Yeah, but they got ways of getting messages out, just like the cronies in jail today, you know. And that's what a lot of people are dealing with. They think they're dealing with the top dog, and they're like, I'm finally into the big game. And it's like you're dealing with, you know, a private in the hierarchy, but he can masquerade like a general. And so some people are really dealing with death himself, and some of them are dealing with one of his princes. And this is what my family's covenant was with the dragon. They didn't mess around, man. They went all the way to the chain of command. They uncovered a bunch of my great-grandfather's grandfather was an archaeologist who dug into Indian mounds out in the Ohio River Valley, and they started finding a priest class that was these serpent worshipers, and that's what they started calling upon. And they started trying to wake up and rise up Huachiblos, which is these deities, these dragon fire deities.
I don't even know where to begin trying to verify any of this, but everything he's saying makes perfect sense and lines up flawlessly with everything else that I've been reading. I know we touch on this fallen angel topic quite a bit, but I really feel like that's where the meat is if you're trying to figure out not only what's going on, but why everything is happening. If you still hear all this stuff about fallen angels and the elites practicing Satanism and you still just immediately start tuning it out, I cannot implore you enough to reconsider. Just a year ago, I would hear about stuff like this and I would immediately make an assumption that these are just people who think that they're more important than everybody else, and so they're trying to be the purveyors of some secret knowledge that probably doesn't actually exist. But the evidence that this is all real, and this is actually what's going on, this is actually what people should be looking for, is overwhelming. You just have to open yourself up to the idea that this world may be much more supernatural than we've been led to believe.
7 years of research, I've never seen anything like this before. This is a motor that cells use to move around. You have trillions of them in you right now. That is the top of a column in a Hindu temple. The level of detail and craftsmanship is one thing, but there's a level of geometric and engineering knowledge that is closer to what we see in aircraft manufacturing. That turbine and the biomotor both do the same thing so that an airplane and bacteria can move. If this isn't depicting the same thing, you're gonna have to explain to me where the design inspiration came from that coupler and the little stator guy right here. No way they could see these things. These things are complex molecular parts that are assembled and held together by electrons and run on electricity so bacteria can move. This little guy is what gets me though. He's like a little clutch that engages the molecules so it can spin. That's not what that is. Run it back. In the little animation, you know what you see when you look straight up into that motor? You see this thing right here. If you look straight up in one of these temples, guess what you see? There's a pile of coincidences and then there's a pile of explanations, and this pile is getting quite large. Last one, they may look the same, but the biomotor runs on electrical frequency, which I would have labeled with a snake if I was writing a manual for this thing.
I just thought that was fascinating. I guess the old saying, there's nothing new under the sun, has a much deeper meaning than I ever realized. This literally looks like they stole the design for this thing straight out of our biology. It looks so similar, it almost has to be where they got it from. So how did the people who designed and built this thing even find out about this microscopic organism residing in the human body? I feel like that's a much bigger mystery than how they built the structure.
These entities are so much more powerful than people can comprehend. And the greatest deception the enemy has accomplished thus far in the last 150 years is to convince people that the Bible is not supernatural. They have our scriptures of all the supernatural elements in there, like in Isaiah 13, when you pick up a scripture today, a Bible today, and it says ostriches are going to dwell there and hairy shaggy goats are going to dwell there. They took away the word satyr. They don't want people to know about Pan and the Baphomet and Azazel. They don't want his identity known. They don't want people to think that there's an actual hierarchical structure to these entities. They have names and characters and temples and priests. And they give us the ostrich instead of the siren. They take away the mermaid-looking creature with serpentine legs coming out of her rear end. That's a kidnap. That's her. And they don't want people to understand that's what dwells in these places. That's what's in these waters of these lakes. I could throw my blades in water and she would bring them back to me.
Really?
That's what she offers. She offers mystically charged magical weapons to warriors. That's the whole Merlin myth. You know, it's not a myth. These are like histories just repackaged to make them palatable in cultures that it's illegal to talk about it. These people operate under this legal groundwork, and when they need to get their stories out and they want to preserve their legends and their truths, they couch them in mysteries. That's the mystery religion. That's not how the Father operates. Yeshua literally said, I've done everything open in the open. You do what you do in secret. That's a different kingdom. And I was a guardian of the secrets for these families, so I witnessed their oaths, their vows, their ceremonies. I was there, brought in to watch them marry children to monsters, to people that looked like men and creatures that were not mankind. I had to bear witness to these atrocities. I had to see people I loved in their pubescent bloom be ravaged, and then watch people take cups, the top head of a catch that, drink it. That's the filth these people are engaging in. It's not just some kind of abominations. The scriptures are explicit about this stuff for a reason. It's shameful to talk about these things. However, this is the reality of what people's lives are wed to. So when your mom who gives birth to you was conceiving you during that, yeah, you got some demonic stuff coming, son.
Yeah.
You know, there's a reason some people are just, their lives are train wrecks all the time.
Yeah.
Because they're dealing with that at their origin. They don't know they're a moon child. They have no idea that they were conjured during a Babylonian ritual. But that stuff carries on, and then they have children who have children. And if you look at the branches of that tree behind me, it doesn't take long until you have a lot of ancestors. And that iniquity feeds like an IV line, like the circulatory system, back to the devil, the dragon himself. All of it ultimately goes through his kingdom, his city in the sky.
Does anyone know what podcast this is from? This podcast episode sounds like it may open up a lot more avenues for digging just based on the terminology he's using. Looking into the purpose of creating a moonchild, from what I can see, which is all based off of the book Moonchild by Aleister Crowley, it looks like the whole purpose is to create a human being who's more easily susceptible to demonic possession, or they're just trying to create a human being who is capable of extraordinary supernatural spiritual power that they can then manipulate to get whatever they want. What doesn't make sense to me, though, is if you were a moonchild who was created in one of these rituals, why would you be out wandering the streets wondering what's wrong with you? Wouldn't they have you under lock and key somewhere trying to keep you under control? I'm just saying, if they're not going to keep tabs on a moonchild that they created, what was the point in doing it in the first place?
Breaking space news. 2 days ago, astronomers confirmed that an interstellar object has entered our solar system, came from somewhere else, traveled through space, and it's here now. This is only the third interstellar object ever identified in our solar system. First was Oumuamua, and we still don't know much about this one. Then an interstellar comet passed in 2019. Okay, and then an object hit Earth in 2014 that could have been interstellar, but we didn't confirm it, so this might be the fourth. Here it is. It's most likely a comet because it does seem to have a little tail like comets do, and this will probably change, but right now they think it's about 12 miles in diameter and about 420 million miles away from us. But it is coming closer, and it's going to reach its closest point in October, and it's going to be about twice the distance from the sun as we are. It will get much closer to Mars, and it will be moving about 42 miles per second. This is by far the fastest interstellar object we've ever seen. Hopefully, as it gets closer, we'll be able to learn more about it and what stuff outside of our solar system is like.
This is being talked about so much online right now, and I can't help but feel like this is the beginning stages of the big lie that they're going to lay on us in a couple months. Maybe as it gets closer, they're going to come out and make a statement saying, actually, that's not a rock floating through space. That's actually a mothership. We'll probably get reports of its speed fluctuating, or they'll come out and say that they've noticed it moving in an unnatural trajectory. I'm just very suspicious of anything they tell us about space. I truly feel like most of what they tell us about space is just an attempt to keep us focused on the stars so we don't wake up to what's going on right in front of our face. And I'm not making a prediction that this is the mothership, but I'm 100% certain that that lie is coming so they can start their fake alien invasion. I guess I'm just constantly on high alert for when they're going to start rolling out that narrative.
Did Pitbull say too much and put a target on his back?
There's a rehearsal that went on before this whole called event.
201. It was ran by the Johns Hopkins University, which is in cahoots with Bill Gates, Melinda Gates Foundation, October 18th, 2019. And this was a complete rehearsal of what we did right now. You have a segment where it said segment financial, what we gonna do, segment travel, what we gonna do, segment what we gonna do when it comes to online. And it said if anybody is not a part of the narrative, we're gonna take it off online, which to me smells like communism. After all of that happens to be about a month later, all the main CEOs in the world, partner, major companies, resigned. About 1,000 and some change. Talking about Disney, Hulu, Microsoft, Nike, Wells Fargo, Boeing, you name it. You look at them. And this is the part that I gotta talk to the world about. That's the tail wagging the dog, partner. While y'all worried about followers and likes and who's on TikTok and Instagram. Mind you, when I was growing up, and Instagram was real simple. Here's a 20 bag, here's an Instagram. So I know I'm gonna give you this and you're gonna get high. Now it's like, hey, look, by the way, here's an Instagram. I want you to picture the bag, the product in it, and I promise you it's gonna get you high. And I hope everybody wake up with what we got going on, and bottom line what it is, people so connected they disconnected. And they take so many pictures they miss the big picture.
I don't know if that's where Instagram got their name. I'm assuming that it's from the combination of the words or the meshing of the words instant and telegram. But I really like that analogy. Puts a more accurate meaning to the name. I don't think this interview put a target on his back though. I'm sure there are people in the government who aren't too fond of this guy. He's too pro-freedom and pro-America. Most of our politicians don't like that, which is absolutely pathetic. But the guy's still doing worldwide tours and releasing new music, so he hasn't been blacklisted or anything.
These Illuminati refer to their offspring in their publications as their children, their offspring. They refer to your offspring as kids. You have kids because you're just like a goat. Sheeple. You're sheeple.
We are being led like sheep to the slaughter. I don't know if you've ever seen sheep go to the slaughter, but they are generally led by a Judas goat. The Judas goat will bring them all the way up the ramp, and right before they drop the trap on the sheep, the Judas goat steps to the side.
When you understand that Europe dominated the world for almost 1,600 years, and the Vatican dominated Europe. The Vatican dominated the old world order. Those banking families that were the Roman Catholic banking families of Europe were the powers of the world. They dominated the world. With the coming of America, America becomes known as the New World. Remember Columbus discovering the New World. When we hear the word New World Order, we're talking about a fraternal order of power, religion, money, operating out of the New World, America.
But a satanic, occultic, evil form of power. The big picture, they want it all. They want to enslave your child, your wife, your mother. There isn't anything that you ever had. There isn't anything that you own. There isn't any right that you possess that they're not planning on taking away.
Sometimes I can't help but to see videos like this and think, what's the point in digging into this stuff and trying to raise awareness? There have been people making videos talking about this stuff apparently since the invention of the video camera. That video looks like it could be 50 years old or more. And still, to this day, the majority of people will laugh at you and call you a lunatic if you try to bring any of this up in casual conversation. Most of the population, if not more, is just as asleep now as they were whenever this video was produced. But then I have to remind myself, we're never going to be able to wake everyone up, but we can at least wake up the people who care enough to be paying attention, and that's enough to make it worth it.
Why the is Google buying fusion energy from Bill Gates? This isn't solar, this isn't wind, this is fusion, the same power that fuels the sun. Clean, unlimited, and powerful enough to run the world. Google just locked in 200 megawatts from a reactor that doesn't even exist yet, and it's coming from a company backed by Bill Gates. Let that sink in. Gates already owns the farmland. Google owns your data. Now they're coming for the power grid. This isn't about saving the planet, it's about locking down total control before anyone else even wakes up. Control the energy, control the system. And these two just made their move. You weren't invited. You weren't informed. But you'll be living inside of it. They're not preparing for the future. They're building it. And when it's done, you'll own nothing. Not even the electricity that powers your lights. Pay attention.
I'm 100% certain that they're just wanting to be on the ground floor of this technology as it blossoms so that they can be some of the first guys to profit off of it. But I don't think this is anything to be panicking about. They have pulled off fusion already, but it's still not even certain how long we've got ahead of us before they reach a point where it's even scalable. Pretty much every first world nation is investing heavily into researching this technology, and Google is not even the first company to invest in it. It looks like pretty much everyone to a degree is banking on this being the future of energy production. It appears to me that this guy may just be focusing in on Bill Gates and Google because of the general mistrust that the population has for that entity and that individual, and then he's just implying that something nefarious is taking place without any actual evidence. The guy really didn't even tell us what we should be afraid of or panicking about, other than Google and Bill Gates are going to have some form of control over the electric grid. I could be wrong, but this one feels like an attempt at fear-mongering to me.
And because it's true, but even if you're not, you can acknowledge, just having lived here for a while, that that is absolutely the way things work.
I don't know about y'all, but the only reason that I even look into this stuff is because I want to know what the truth is. I want to know what's going on behind the scenes in this world. And I want to know what the basis of my reality truly is. If you're ignoring all of the evidence around you and not using the actual Bible to make your determination on whether God is real or not, I'm telling you, you're doing yourself a huge disservice. There's a reason why people who follow Christ are so eager to tell everyone about it. They've found the truth. It's not because they need more people to help fund the church. It's because once you find the truth, you are literally floored by just how much this world lies to you, and you start seeing others for who they really are. God's creation, and you just can't help it. You feel overwhelmed with this urge to pull people out of the deception and expose them to the truth. And how anyone would expect me to not share the truth when I've found it and it's the sole purpose of my channel, it just doesn't make any sense to me. But if this is a topic that you've written off, I am pleading with you. The evidence is overwhelming. You just have to look for it. And I think pretty much everybody knows it should be common knowledge what the Bible says happens if you get this wrong. At the very least, it's worth a second look. What if you have it wrong? After all, we're all only human. Before we move on to our next clip, I just wanted to give everyone a heads up. This clip is roughly 7 minutes long. The video shows a very vivid description of how, or a theory of how, our solar system may actually function. And while a lot of it sounds really crazy and far-fetched, there's some really interesting points being made in this clip that I want to talk about.
So outer space does exist. So all flat earthers out there saying that outer space doesn't exist, it does, but it's just been usurped. It's not physically going to Mars itself, the sun, Mars, the luminary. That's ridiculous. It's going to these lands where Mars is the sun. That's what they're trying to tell us. Each of these toroidal fields also has its own sun and moon. Saturn and Jupiter revolving around the outer torus field. Mars and Venus on the next toroidal field. Apollo and Artemis, or our sun and moon, on our torus field. But in the center, there is only one androgynous sun and moon, which is Mercury on the inside, okay? On this torus field, the aurora borealis. The next question, or the next natural question, would be, well, what's above these toroidal fields? Above all the toroidal fields, we've got something known as the firmament, okay? This is where the stars are. This is what we see when you look up at the sky in the evening. All the stars and the constellations. This is the firmament that sits above the last inner toroidal field. The one that Saturn and Jupiter revolves around, okay? So that will be the cosmic egg on top. In fact, I'll put it together. So that's what it looks like, right? So the firmament inside this torus egg, okay? The sky that runs across, okay? So it's almost like a dome, okay? So we're sealed off from these realms above, and I'll explain all that in a second, right? So when we're looking at it from underneath, when we're sat on the earth, we're seeing all the constellations revolving above us, okay? So pretty straightforward, really. So that's the firmament, okay? So this firmament, on its axis, right, is revolving, okay? There's motion, everything's moving above us, but the terra firma we're standing on is obviously not moving, okay? So this axis is revolving, it's turning the firmament with all the stars and the constellations and everything else. In turn, it's also affecting the motions of these toroidal fields that are spinning around us, like we discussed earlier on. Those toroidal fields are also carrying the suns and moons around, which is causing our days and nights and seasons and times, okay? And that in turn, that motion is also creating our weather, our winds, our currents, flows, airstreams, everything else. So it's one big system working together. It's a network starting from the cosmic vortex. Okay, so what that would look like is something like this. Okay, now interestingly enough, okay, we talked about the planets. I suppose many people will be asking, what about Uranus and Neptune and Pluto? Okay, so I think Uranus and Neptune are the two realms above. Okay, so Uranus is the firmament above us. Why am I saying this? Well, Mother Gaia, we all know, is Earth in Greek mythology, okay? Gaia was married to Uranus, right? The planet Uranus, as they tell us, Uranus was named after Gaia's husband, Uranus. Uranus married to Uranus. These two are married, okay? They go hand in hand. Same thing with Kemetic Egyptian mythology, okay? You've got Mother Geb. She was married to the Egyptian god Nut. And Nut is always depicted as the sky, okay? So Uranus, Nut, Uranus, same thing, okay? They also tell us that Uranus and Neptune are kind of planets, but they're exoplanets. They don't go in the same category as these 7 wandering stars, okay? They put in a different category, and that's the reason why, okay? Pluto the planet Pluto was named after the Greek god of the underworlds. And that's because Pluto is the firmament below us. As above, so below. There's a firmament above us, but there's also a firmament below us. Okay? Below the great sea, the great deep, the Gabadoka Ocean, as the Vedics called it. Okay? So that tells me syncretically that there is a firmament and what the firmament is, and that shows you how I've come to that conclusion. Okay? Above that, you've got Neptune. Neptune was named after the Greek, the keeper of the waters. Okay, which waters? The waters above and the waters below. Okay, so Neptune is the keeper of the waters. This is the next realm. By the way, these realms above the firmament are very transcendental. We cannot go to these planets naturally. We all know that. Okay, these are luminaries. These are suns and moons. We can't go to the sun or the moons. Okay. Outer space does exist, like I said. It's beyond these Van Allen belts and these lands beyond. This would be outer space, okay? Definitely, we cannot go up here. This place is very, very transcendental. It's spiritual. You can only go there as a soul or a spirit or a star. It's all the same thing, okay? This is the only time you can go up there, and I'll explain all that in a minute, okay? So mainstream science tells us that there is Uranus, Neptune, and I'll explain how the heavens work. So there are 4 heavens and there are 4 hells. In fact, the Vedics say there are 7 heavenly realms and 7 hellish realms. Again, we'll go through that in a second. So mainstream science tells us that there's the Milky Way galaxy, Andromeda galaxy, and the Omega galaxy, and then the point of singularity. Okay, this is where Polaris is. Polaris is right at the top, okay? Right in the center of the axis, the cosmic axis. Right, everything is spinning around Polaris, just like we witness with our eyes. When you look up at the North Star, Polaris, you see all the stars are revolving, yeah, around Polaris. Okay, Polaris is Brahma, the creator. This is Big Brother. So when you see that triangle with the eye that these elites show us, this is what they're trying to tell us, that Big Brother is watching. Okay, unfortunately, they're twisting it and usurping it and making it very occult. It shouldn't be an occult thing. This is something everyone should know. Okay, this is Big Brother. This is our father. This is Brahma looking out for us.
I wanted to talk about these planets being the stars for these outer realms. This may explain why all of these planets look like stars when viewed through a telescope. Every time we get an official photo of one of these planets, we get detailed terrain and the color profile that we're taught from elementary school to associate with each individual planet, like how Mars is supposed to be a big red rock. But when someone posts a video to TikTok with their phone looking through their telescope in the backyard, it looks like a star with constantly changing shapes and patterns and stuff emanating from it. I don't know how much I believe in that clip, but I know that we're being lied to about space. So I'm always going to listen to any theory on the topic until I find something that makes more sense than this garbage nonsense that NASA's given us. But what jumped out to y'all in that clip? Is there a more big picture detail that I missed? And what do y'all think about this theory in general? But guys and gals, I'm going to go ahead and end the video right there. I hope you enjoyed these clips we watched together today. I'll be back soon with another video. I hope you come back to join me. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and check out my merch store at barry-stepp.com. And don't forget to drop a photo of your merch over in the Discord to get your photo in a video. But guys and gals, I hope everyone has a great, safe, fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you all in the next one.